conditions will be effective.
Okay, it's 12 o'clock. Let's call the infrastructure committee meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Steve Brenner.
Here.
Keith Durr.
Here.
Jen Harmer's going to join us via phone. Fred Mogul.
Here.
And Dave Reese.
Here.
All right. Public comment.
Yeah, I had a couple of words to say regarding an item on the agenda, discussion about the
Hi, I'm gonna put you on speaker, okay?
Sorry, your time didn't start yet. You good? Hi, Jen.
Hello, how you guys doing?
Good. We're starting public comment right now.
So about the Service Electric contract, again, I've asked before. I'm a little bit disappointed that nobody here, is sensitive to this matter. I love competition, but again, the issue of hanging those cables on poles, it's a serious matter. I think we have to look at the fact that those fiber optic cables are heavy, and it's an unsightly situation. You go on Route 10 and you see what happens when, we start putting all these fiber optic cables together. It looks like a third world country. It's just not something that it's desirable. It becomes a problem in terms of weight. It becomes a problem in terms of winds. The power lines may go down because there is a lot more mass that will swing in storms, and then the probability for it to go down is higher. So I think that I would have loved to see that more effort was placed into requesting Service Electric to bury their cables throughout Wyomissing. I know they're getting buried in the areas where they're already buried, but we can also do better in the other areas. And we have to start somewhere. We cannot get to the point where we have a ton of fiber optic cable. They have no power into them, so they don't need to be buried at high depth, very deep. There is no danger for anybody. So it's possible to do it. And like I said, those poles and the infrastructure that was placed here in the 50s, 40s, whenever it was done, was for a little copper cable to be at the top of those poles, not to have a ton of glass fiber optic cables hanging on them. So it's just, I don't have a feel that enough emphasis, or I don't know, you're not receptive to this issue, because I think it is an issue. That's it, thank you.
Okay. Moving on, is there any other public comment?
It's TV cables, not it. Well, that's the other company. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, hearing none, moving on, zoning and codes report, and we need to discuss any changes from when we got the report.
No changes from when you got it, it's pretty self-explanatory. I did ask Jeff Hoag from Kraft for next month's report to take off all of the properties that are in compliance, because it's pretty lengthy because of that. And I also asked him, there's a few properties on there that say they were passed to the borough for further action, that I don't have anything other than 524 Douglas. I filed a citation on, but I already sent him the email. Yeah, so the ones that the borough needs to follow up with, either on citation or civil suit, will be followed up on. I just need the information.
Does anybody have any question on the zoning, on the report? Zoning and or codes report? Hearing none, we'll move on. Service Electric, Chris, I don't think we need to talk about this much, do we?
Yeah, there's nothing new. Council will consider the ordinance approving the agreement at its April meeting.
So we can probably take this off this agenda. Western Berks Water Authority,
Okay, a couple items. We received a $27,000 grant to upgrade our fluoride system,
nice.
which is always nice. Regarding Warren Street, the contractor has been given all the information where the crack is and so forth. He is in the process of developing a cost to do the job. And we have a meeting with PennDOT on 4/20, so it's moving along. Maybe not as quickly as we like, but it is moving. Okay, and we will do everything we can to get it moving, keep moving.
It's moving at glacier pace.
Well, I understand.
No, not the rate glaciers are melting.
What was that?
At the rate the glaciers are melting, though, it's not very fast.
Global warming reference thing.
Yeah, I'm not commenting on that. So anyway, so that's the update on Warren Street. Eastern Environmental is gonna be here to start on the gallery work, and we're anticipating our first major shutdown probably the end of April, which at the moment, with the gallery work, they'll be shutting that down for a couple hours at a time. We don't think it'll be a problem, because we know what's happening. That's about all I have on that. Do you have anything, Chris?
No, that's it.
Okay. That's all I have. Any questions? Thank you.
Water, new lead and copper roll.
Nothing to add there. Item B, the contractor did start, I'm gonna say they're about a third complete. And next month at this time, we'll have a payment application.
Good.
Western Berks Water backup, nothing. Item E, that UCMR, this is a little weird in that, it's a EPA federal sampling, this UCMR, looking for chemicals they want to regulate in the future. And we just took our first sample last week, and also last week I got a letter from the DEP, not the EPA, saying, oh, we're sampling for these now, we're not waiting for the EPA. So I'm hoping I got some word that maybe if Western Berks takes the samples for that DEP portion, that the individual boroughs will not have to. It's an expensive test.
I think Chip is gonna be talking to do more concentrated sample. You're talking about the PFAS, the
Mhm.
forever chemicals, I guarantee you guys, it's gonna bite us cost-wise. Just a warning for the future.
It always does.
It always does.
I'm
And it's-
surprised to see there's TV commercials now about it.
Oh, yeah, and this is expensive crap to be testing. So, it's coming, guys, yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, maybe we'll start budgeting for it, setting money aside in future budgets.
For sampling.
We did with the MS4 stuff.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, anything else, Jim? On water,
No.
underwater?
Nope.
Sanitary sewer, we already discussed that.
I don't know if we need action on this or not. You had asked me at the last meeting to get the number down from the contractor. It was exceeding $400,000, which was our budget number. If I take out some of the less pressing items on that list, I got it to under 400,000. But it's a CoStar's contract. Do we need official approval for that to proceed, or?
Well, is it unit pricing, or is it, do
Yeah,
they?
yeah. It's lining per dollar per foot, TVing dollar per foot.
Okay, well, I think the scope of what work is being approved to be done for the current year should somehow come before the committee. So, if you worked out what you think would be an appropriate scope to get the cost within the budgeted amount, I think that's something the committee act on.
Could we just say, it's a CoStar's contract with Sewer Specialties, for, cleaning and TV work, point repairs, manhole to manhole lining, and it's gonna be slightly under $400,000.
The scope will not exceed the budgeted amount.
That too would not exceed $400,000.
Yeah, I think that would be an appropriate approval.
Jim, did you have to sacrifice anything that you think?
No, I went
Really?
back and looked, I mean, these things should get done, but there's nothing that I'm panicking over, so, I feel safe doing what we're doing.
But if you don't do it as part of this package, will it cost you more to do it because it's not done in conjunction?
There's a price increases every year.
Right.
But we do
that-
it every year.
But I'm not talking about the price, okay.
We do some
So it could
separate.
just be tackled
Just
on
every
the
time.
side.
We do this, right, Jim, you're gonna,
Yes.
you do this every year,
Every
year.
so it's just, we'll move some of those to next year.
Thanks.
All right, does anybody wanna make the recommendation of all the things Jim said that does not, that is up to and not exceeding the $400,000 budgeted item? Motion, do we have a second to that?
Second.
Motion to second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Sorry, Jen. Any opposed? The ayes carry it, okay. Streets.
Pump station.
You got,
Oh, I'm sorry, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I'm getting too anxious here. Berkshire Boulevard Pump Station, didn't we award that already?
Yes.
Okay, so everything's ready to go.
Contracts are signed, waiting for shop drawings.
What do we need to talk about with the West Lawn Interceptor?
nothing, the only update I wanted to give you is the Highlands has paid their portion of the cost sharing agreement.
Okay. Now on the streets. Change order 2 was attached, revised contract price, assume we need a motion for that? Did we do that already? No, we didn't.
That's the rectifying change order.
How do we stand with the budget?
Decrease.
It's a decrease from the contract. Original contract was 162,817, it's now 143,129. So 19,688 is the decrease in the contract.
So we need a motion to accept, to apply change order number 2 in the amount of $143,129.
Why do I have for the why do I have $50,000 in the budget for 50?
23 or 20?
Two.
This is 22.
This is 22.
Oh, this is 22, okay.
Did you get?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second for change order number 2 for the amount of $143,129. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes carry. Street improvements, I know we already awarded that contract to Construction Master Services LLC. We're just waiting for the contracts.
Correct.
Yeah, when does that usually get done? That's
Start, if I were to, it's just a guess, June-ish, we would start.
You can write down June-ish, that's fine.
This is a possible change order if we'd like to do it. This is, Old Mill Road. Your back is towards the swimming pool, you're looking up towards Parkside Drive South. We have a little plot of land there, around 135 feet of frontage, and that driveway is for 1020 Old Mill Road. They've just done a lot of construction there. My, not concern, my request is, on the residential side, as you go up past 1020, there's rolled curb everywhere. It's just from Parkside Drive South down to Old Y Missing Road at 1020 and on our property, there's no curb, no rolled curb, and now with all their construction, everything's a mess there. Curbing would help improve some drainage there. The price we got from our street contractor is a ridiculous $160 a foot for rolled
180, I
curb,
think, wasn't it?
160.
Is it, there was a lot.
$160 a foot.
A foot.
Do a foot.
I think the reason it's so high is because the only other rolled curb on the contract is 5 feet here, 10 feet there. If we would talk to them and say, hey, we have this 200 and almost 300 feet of curbing, could we get a price for that where it's not piecemeal? And they-
I'm sure that's why our price is so
Yeah,
high. We're
yeah.
with little pieces.
Yeah. So we would go to Construction Master Services and ask them for a price And if it's decent enough price, we could come back to this committee and say, it's gonna cost this much. The people, I've talked to 1020 Old Mill Road, and they would like to be involved. We would put it in and bill them, but they do have interest.
Is that really just the addition, is that dock empties, empties old house?
So your request is for authorization to seek a price
Yeah.
for that work?
Just keep in mind, we're already $105,000 over budget on streets. And
Mhm.
committed to it.
Garrett got a quote. Okay.
It is looking bad over there, the, cars are parking in there, it's all like tire track trenched now, and it's just becoming a real muddy mess.
Item D, the highway lighting. Let's see what pictures we got here. Let's go with the quote first. So there's multiple issues out there. This is a quote from Telco. When they were out there, they found a quantity of ballasts and bulbs that were bad, to the tune of $15,337. There's also some bad conduit, so there's shorts in some of the wiring. That would be done on a time and materials basis because they don't know what they're getting into. But we did find the agreement with PennDOT, and I was partially right and partially wrong when I said it the other meeting. We are responsible for getting the lighting fixed. But PennDOT will reimburse us half of that cost if we submit them bills. So I don't know how much we want to, well, we have to pursue it, there's very little lighting.
Yeah, we have a legal obligation
Yeah.
to restore that light. That's part of our contract obligation with PennDOT. So I think we can choose maybe a little bit on the timing because it's already been out for a while, but we really do need to proceed. And I'd be a little concerned about putting it off because of the risk of somebody getting hurt.
Obviously, it's not a budgeted item.
We have money in the budget, it's a general category for street lights, traffic signal maintenance. I think it's like 25 grand, but this would more than blow that out of the water.
So we're talking about a $15,000 expense, of which we'll get 70 roughly.
Well, it'll be more than that because that's just for the bulb, there's these.
Oh, that's just the
there's
bulbs.
these- It would be time and materials, he couldn't quote me a price, because through all that debris and rocks and brush and those interchanges, somewhere, there's a short and they gotta find it. And he said, that's just time and materials, could be, if they get lucky, can do it in a day, be a couple grand, if it takes them a week, could be more than that. It's unknown,
But it won't take a month.
I wouldn't think so. I'm saying if I were to guess at that bill, 15 for the bulbs and ballasts, and maybe another 10 to fix the short, so we're up to 25, and then we would pay half of 25.
Keith?
It's gotta be done, I mean, it's part of our contract.
Yeah, I think
It's gotta be done. Plus, it's a safety issue.
Is this considered an emergency repair? Is this considered an emergency repair?
Well, we have a.
You have a maintenance contract with Telco to maintain all your lights and signals, so you don't need to bid this work. But if you didn't, it would qualify as emergency repair.
Yeah, it's a safety issue, it's gotta be fixed.
All right, so I'll make the recommendation, we go ahead and replace the bulbs and try to find where the short is. A second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes carry.
That one you just had up, that's the map.
No, I thought that was.
This is just informational. I was getting a bunch of requests and one calls from different engineers about this area over here. This is Warren Street between Paper Mill and Crossing. And,
Hold on. Paper mill.
Paper Mill to the left,
There's crossing.
Okay.
and crossing, and then, the ramps. On the right-hand side, those are the ramps from 222 coming into the interchange. If you can envision that. Anyway, so I'm like, I couldn't understand why they were asking for all this information, and maybe this was already known, I didn't know it, but They're going to be widening the area in blue. They're gonna be adding a lane or widening those lanes and then resurfacing that area. Not till this is far out, this is 2027, 2028. But, it scares me, and I told them, I said, we're probably gonna be spending money with fixing all the streetlights in that area. If you're widening the road, don't be wrecking our conduit and giving us more issues. But that's upcoming PennDOT work sometime in the next 5 years, just information.
Okay.
The ramp coming off of 222 from Broadcasting,
It's gonna be widened
they're gonna widen that.
on
and
Warren
then-
Street.
And then on the Warren Street, so somebody stuck in the right. And that's gonna be correct.
Yeah, 2 lanes coming on.
Enough crashes there already?
Well, last
Trucks
Friday-
roll over there all the time.
Yeah, oh yeah, 2 trucks rolling over the time.
Oh, you know, it's
More than
gonna-
one.
somebody's gonna be in that
More
right hand
than
lane, they're
one.
gonna wanna get onto the
They
bypass.
didn't
And
mention
they're gonna
that.
be stuck over there.
You're talking about
All
the
the way to
flyover.
Spring.
Yeah, they should do something about that.
In that direction,
They did not
and
mention.
12, get off 12, that was all backed up too, just everything funneling down to one lane.
All the issues with people.
Okay. Not much we can do about it in this meeting.
Line painting, we put money in the budget every year to repaint all the long lines from Woodland, Berkshire, Cambridge, all the crosswalks, arrows and whatnot. And I'm looking at them, and I don't think they need it. I think there'll be some specific things, John may have some things in mind, I have a few things in mind, but to go out and blanket, reline all the paint seems like a waste of money to me this year. I think we can skip it. If anybody sees anything that they would question, we could still get it done, and we'll be doing some things that John or I see, but to blanket the whole borough for 95 grand, it just seems like a waste of money to me at this point.
Listen, if John's okay with it, I'm okay with it.
Are you gonna be able to get over to the hills and do those lines for John soon?
Yeah, I think that's what we're talking about here with these, them coming out in.
No, this isn't the annual.
No, but we were talking about putting on the road the slow down or 25.
Yeah,
That
this
would be-
contractor can
That
do
would
that.
be that.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah, he'll still come in and can do some work. I'm just saying the blanket,
What
we
we do
usually every year,
year.
usually come in and do all the lines, and we've done it for 2 or 3 years now, and I think that's helped, and now they don't need it every year, maybe we do it every other year. you know?
Is that in part because we didn't have any winter weather?
Could be part, that could be part of it. Could be.
You're not under contract with them to have to do it every year?
No.
Did we put the appropriate lines down for over by the Hills Playground? We were talking about, where we included some ramps and stuff?
Well, no, I mean, that's gonna be part of this, and the question was, in the meantime, do we wanna temporarily go out and spray paint? I think
You
Jim
talking
was,
about the dog thing?
yeah,
Yeah.
Jim was waiting for specific locations, which I think the chief needs to.
We're kind of waiting on weather to stay nice here, and I think after this week, looks like it's gonna be pretty decent. We can get out there hopefully and put some lines down.
Okay. Sounds like we just found the $12,500 from that. Okay, I would proceed without, I wouldn't paint if the both of you think we don't need to repaint lines that we're gonna pay for, don't repaint them. That'd be my answer. So, go.
Can we get a number then, what we think you're going to do and what the cost is compared to the budget, so we can use that elsewhere?
We can
We just
try.
did.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, to be, if on the high end, I would say out of that 95, I'd say spend 15 grand of that.
I don't know what they charge, so.
Yeah.
So let's say you have 80,000,
But what about the extra for over the hills, isn't that?
we're including that.
That's not, it's not a lot of money.
Great.
Once you feel comfortable with that, just tell Phyllis to put that on the sheet.
Changes to the budget sheet.
The under overshoot.
Well, it's just,
The only issue she
we
did,
have it, then we can feel comfortable.
Phyllis did ask me to mention this, I'm glad you brought that up. This is paid for out of liquid fuels money.
Okay.
So it has to stay in that category?
So that doesn't matter, unless you have another project that,
She said she can just carry it over.
okay, can be used.
They apply curb work.
The curb work can be done with liquid fuels.
Perfect. Once we get the quote, then there's $160
And
square
that
foot.
puts back
Go
the
for it.
When we try to Paris Ave to the west, the contract.
I was just trying to avoid that.
Yeah, I don't really recommend, I would try to avoid that. Street light work, we found, yeah, short repairs.
Good point.
So that, actually, your light work would fall under eligible for liquid fuels without having to go to Charlie Paris to get it pre-approved. Because,
The lights we're talking about in highway.
yeah, lights, highway lights and traffic signal lights are eligible for, liquid fuels. There's like 19 things you can use liquid fuels for without going through a construction project liaison approval.
Sounds like you need over 100 on a liquid fuels fund. If we could use the liquid fuels fund, it might be under budget, we'll do so. All right. PennDOT State Hill Road improvements. I don't know what we need to talk about, except that when do we need to, it says the borough needs to determine the roundabout center island treatments that are desired.
Well, we told them what we want, but they haven't sent us anything back for us to actually approve, so that's kind of open.
So we
until they
gave,
send
so
us
we
the-
gave them something to talk to the cement wall up, right?
Right.
So this is a done deal that they're putting these roundabouts in, and it's still not open for discussion, or?
They're supposed to be coming back to us at some point for an updated presentation as to, I mean, one of the things they're still looking at is what if, how much right away they're taking from any private properties, what the design is actually gonna look like, is it gonna include sidewalk, bike lanes, how wide are they making it, that is what they're working on.
And a
right
ton
now.
of utility work that
Yeah.
we haven't even dipped our toe into so far.
So I would expect sometime in the next 6 months, they'll be coming back with an updated presentation similar to the one they gave in January of '21.
Year.
2, sorry,
12
2.
months. No, 12 months, I don't think they'll be here in 6 months with their plans.
If it's all right, I have a question for State Hill Road. State Hill Road is a state road, correct? But Lawndale is not. That's our
Correct.
stuff, right? Has there been any interaction between PennDOT and us with regard to what we know is happening is that people use Woodland Road to access State Hill Road by avoiding the lights by coming in through those streets that are contiguous to State Hill? Are they gonna care whether or not they just created a giant traffic jam over there? Or do we care?
Well, they're hoping that it's gonna take a traffic jam away, that's their.
And they've done all, they've studied all those intersections along State Hill within the project limits as part of their, actually prior in the preliminary, what we would call preliminary design.
You say they're opening it, is that what you're saying?
No, they did traffic studies at all those intersections, so they know the traffic flows that are coming out of all the borough streets and all their streets into State Hill. And whether they're making right, left straights, they have all that.
So it shouldn't be a problem.
They should be designing for all that, yeah.
I think the important, Ron, to touch on your comment, the important part is to make it known to PennDOT during construction, they need to have dialogue with the residents of Wyomissing Hills, because that's when they're gonna see increased traffic flow.
Well, if it's just, you're right, they should know, but they should really know that when it's over, it's gonna be good, rather than it's really bad and it's gonna get
I
worse.
think that came up in the meeting the other week, didn't it?
Briefly,
I think everybody knows that those streets are gonna get Warwick and Lawndale are gonna get crushed during construction. We'll just put Officer or Chief Phillips in charge of that and come arrest him.
Well, I mean, it's simple. There's nothing we're gonna be able to do with the increased traffic, and that's why people are gonna go, so.
pay your resident tax.
Okay, any other questions on the, State Hill Road project?
At some point in that, we'll be approaching PennDOT about them paying a cost share of any utilities we have to relocate. Public utilities aren't eligible for that, they have to relocate their own costs, but municipalities and municipal authorities are eligible for a reimbursement of the relocation of those utilities. That'll be a negotiation and an agreement we'll have to, at some point down the road, when we have more of a definitive plan to show them and say, well, here's what needs to be moved of ours, and here's how much it's gonna cost, and can you just write us a check, would be the first contact.
So they, if we wanna move the water, that pit, I think at Woodland, I think it is somewhere in there.
If the water pit is ours, yes. If it's Western Berks or PA Americans, no.
I think it's our.
Well, there's two pits.
There's two
One is
pits.
yours, one is
One's
ours.
ours, one's yours. We talked about eliminating the two and combining them into one.
And that should be done.
Actually, we're meeting Friday.
There's a Friday field meeting, and more stuff on the, in front of the travel agency, there's two old pits there that nobody wants to claim ownership to.
Right.
So you would combine the two pits.
That's the
I think
thought.
that's the general.
Combine the two pits and move them down away from the roundabout. Because PennDOT was gonna put them in the center of the roundabout. We don't
Okay.
think that's safe for Western Berks or borough employees to be out in the center of the roundabout, checking in a water meter pit.
Talking about moving it down Woodland Road, right?
Right, down towards the mall building, 100 feet down, probably 80 feet down, something like that.
All right.
MS4?
MS4, I just, like 5 minutes to kind of update you some things that's been on the agenda forever. There is a little bit of movement going on, and just to give you a big picture of some things that are happening with MS4, and if I make this 5 minutes, I get to put it on our report that I educated a committee. And that counts for brownie points, so. And I always start with, some of you, most of you will remember, I barely remember, I was a little kid, some river in Cleveland caught on fire back in the late 60s, early 70s. And that prompted the Clean Water Act of 1972. And that Clean Water Act for the first decades, multiple decades, just focused on sewage treatment plants, industries that were just dumping point source bad stuff into the river. They got that under control, and it took until the early 2000s for that 1972 Clean Water Act to trickle down to municipalities with this MS4 program. MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. We get, since the early 2000s, we get 5-year permits from the DEP and have to comply with those permits. The first 2 or 3, most of them were shuffling paper, doing presentations on what the creek or rivers clean, runoff from construction sites, things like that. But there was no push to actually put shovels in the ground over anything. But that is changing. Our current permit, which runs out in 2026, we're actually gonna have to start spending money building or improving detention basins, swales, things like that. We are in the Wyomissing Creek drainage basin and the Topahocken Creek drainage basin, or 2. The people, the municipalities that are in the Wyomissing Creek drainage basin got together 10 plus years ago. And so as opposed to each municipality trying to meet these new rules, and our rule is, the rule is the Wyomissing Creek needs to reduce sediment by 375,000 pounds by 2026. It's a TM, total maximum daily load. So to meet our permit, we have to somehow prove through engineering voodoo that we remove 375 pounds. So to make it easier, Spring Township, Wyomissing, West Reading, Moton, Coomru, Shillington, and the city of Reading got together and developed this Wyomissing Creek Coalition. So now we can deal with it all as well. There's 2 projects that the group is looking at now. One is, they call it Highbrook. I was there one time a long time ago. It's a townhouse place over in Moton. and there's a tributary to the Wyomissing Creek, a lot of erosion, a lot of sediment going in. We are, as a group, looking to improve that through some piping and some swales to take some of that 375,000 pounds out of the creek. It's a project that you'll never see, I'll never see, but it's in the Wyomissing Creek, and we can, once done, it'll be on our permit, because we're a group, and it'll satisfy our permit, the Wyomissing permit, even though it's being done in Moton Borough. The other project, the best project, is behind the Lowe's on 724 there. The stamp, what we refer to as the Stanford Avenue Dam. It's a humongous dam, doesn't hold hardly any water, just runs through. And if that could detain more water, it would get rid of a lot of sediment, and it would help our flooding issues downstream, because we're downstream from it. So the more that can hold back, the less flooding you have at like the Logan Avenue detention basin. So those are two projects that we're working on to comply with our permit by 2026, and that's what our $80,000 a year contribution is for, to do these types of projects, even though they're not getting done in the borough. And then with Jim, for the top of Hocken Creek, there is no loop for the top of Hocken Creek. We have some preliminary ideas on some improvements over on Berkshire Boulevard, basically, to try to meet these same goals for the top of Hocken Creek. But we're on our own for that. There's no top of Hocken Creek.
How many pounds do you have to keep out of Hubbard Creek?
That's not sediment based.
That's a nutrient,
Nutrients.
phosphorus or nitrogen or something. All right, so that's my spiel.
I think you qualify for your 5 minutes.
It's like at 8 o'clock in the morning art class. But no, thank you. I mean, obviously, it's not getting done in the borough, but it's gonna benefit the borough, so, yeah, all good. All right, do we need to discuss anything on the Cambridge Avenue stream work?
Nope.
Okay, Wyomissing Creek pedestrian bridge,
Same.
figured, green light goes, pretty much done, both ones?
They're in process, they're not done, they're.
Well, I meant, but we're done with Bar Park.
Other than improving the payment apps as they come in.
Are there any changes that have come up during construction?
Now, they're having a hard time getting the actual materials, the controllers for and all that stuff.
All right, I guess I should rephrase my statement. There's nothing we need to do at today's meeting.
Correct.
Got it. All right. Admin and police department study, need study.
You should have all gotten a copy of the initial report last week, and then there was a one-page update to it that I sent out on Friday.
Yep.
I don't know where you even want to begin the discussion, other than the short Cliff Notes version of the study is both the admin side and the police department side are undersized for the operations that are taking place right now.
Well, I think the bigger issue, besides being undersized, is the fact that he's highlighting the deficiencies in a lot of the areas that are no longer ADA compliant, or, you know, the use of unisex bathrooms being illegal and not enough locker room space for women. I think it's just not I think it's going well beyond what size would be ideal. I think it highlights the necessity of doing something. I think that's all on the table, but I think what it does, I thought, Jim, and that's the reason I asked that question to Michelle, I thought we may get a little more clarification on his estimated costs. I thought that was gonna be part of the scope of the project, and apparently, from what your email said, it didn't look like it was really part of the scope, although
Yeah.
his addendums now,
What numbers?
He gave us some
Oh,
ball.
yeah.
I mean, this is a cost in terms of having a piece of property where you would build something.
Right.
And then he sent that addendum the other day that Michelle asked him to which I think gives a little bit of an outline of, you know, for options 1 and 2. Not very, I don't think I'd go to the bank and take that to the bench, but I think it gives you an outline. But I think, to your point, Michelle, where you start, well, I think you start at the necessity of, we have an issue.
Yeah.
Not only a space issue, but a
Code compliance issue.
code compliance and accommodation issue. I mean, we have 3 police, how many women?
Three now.
3 now, going on 4, who are
No.
basically.
No, we're three now.
Oh, the
Two
two goes
going
on the academy.
2 hopefully
One
going
is
to
in
3.
the academy.
So, I mean, you got 3 living and changing in the closet, basically.
And if we were to do a fourth, as I said, the last 2 testing cycles that we've done, we've hired females. Their females have tested high on the list. We do that again, I don't know where we put her.
Well, the other thing, you've talked about how difficult it is to attract officers. And it seems to me at some point, they're not going to, they'll not only compare salaries, they're gonna compare locker rooms and other kinds of conditions, and
That's a good point, Janet, because, you know, to attract good people, you bring them in and you show them the conditions they're gonna live in.
Look, I think it's pretty obvious of anybody who wants to go through this building, and I include the police department as the building. We got problems here. And I think we have to face the fact that at some point, we're gonna have to think about buying real estate somewhere else. Because to put $6 million+ into this building just doesn't make any sense.
Jim and I were just talking about this, we both think, we're thinking
12.
10 to 15.
Yeah.
To do everything this is
At
saying.
6, it doesn't make sense to me.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you don't even know until you start opening walls what you're gonna find.
Yeah, that's why I think he didn't really want to give you a real number on that, because that's a whole, if you remember, when we asked them to do this, we were throwing around the idea of, do we look to acquire an existing building or build a new building? And we were going back and forth, and I suggested, well, we don't know what we're even asking a commercial realtor to find us. So I think now we have that, we need 20,000 square feet with probably around 100 parking spaces to cover police and admin and visitors and meeting traffic. So at least now, if council's so inclined, we kind of have that. If somebody has an 8,000 square foot building that we like, that's not gonna suit us. If somebody has a 50,000 square foot building, unless we wanna get in the landlord business, that's way too big for us. So, we need something around 20,000,
I do think he's somewhat aggressive on his square foot requirements.
meaning they're light.
Yeah, because they're
I think
heavy.
they're excessive in some areas. I was sitting in my office where I said to Michelle, I've got a sofa, a lounge chair with an ottoman, a light, a desk, 2 credenzas, a bookshelf, and a plant, and 2 visitors' chairs, and it's a lot smaller than what he's recommending for some of these offices, some of the line people offices. I question whether, and I'm not saying that overall it's not fairly accurate, but it's big. It's big.
I haven't had a chance to read it in detail to get to that level yet.
Well,
No, I have it if you want.
But the reality of it is, whether the offices are 100 square feet too big or 500 square feet too big, which they're not.
and I've got
I think we need to really consider looking into other real estate and then figure out what we're gonna do with this building at some point down the road, including selling it.
Can I ask you questions?
You can ask for it.
Thanks. Has anybody looked at some of the more modern police departments in the surrounding counties that are similar to us? And that Harrisburg built a fairly significant operation up there to get some idea of how they are outfitting their operations instead of just sort of winging it with Lee Olson?
Well,
coincidentally.
the reason we picked Olson, Meister, and Watkins was they all have experience in municipal complexes with police departments. That's why we went, that's why we got proposals from the 3 of them, because we wanted to make sure we've had architects that have done multiple municipal complexes with police and admin combined.
But I was suggesting that John actually go to some of these departments and see, because there are a lot of departments that have offices for all their officers. they're in a bullpen environment. They have large educational areas where they can do seminars in there, which I don't see on his stuff. So I know Lee Olson's a great architect, but I don't know how many police departments he has put together from scratch, including parking lots and all the other things that need holding cells and all the technology that goes into them now. And some of the newer ones out there who have already made all the mistakes might be able to give him something. I mean, I prefer if he looked at these places to see what they're doing as opposed to.
We have a basic footprint of a building across the street a couple of years ago, many years ago, 2009.
Who did that?
2009, I think.
Who did that?
Cattering Kelly Architects.
That's another architect.
I get it. When I looked across the street, we have a basis of what that architect thinks the
Yeah.
police department needs in a building that happens to be across the street from here, that happens to be for sale.
What's the
I
square
can't-
footage in
I-
that building?
25,000.
How much?
25,000.
What?
Across the
But that's
street.
including a separate 2,900 square foot corner office that could be leased separately from the remaining 22,000.
So it's the size of it.
Yeah. it's
The biggest problem, I'm speaking just to speak, not to really educate anybody, but at the end of the day, we're landlocked. We've got very few opportunities to purchase any properties that are sizable enough and not too sizable. So across the street, I think, is something that we have to look at very, very, very closely, very quickly. And we may be winging some of the stuff. I don't mean at the end of the day, but if we know that, if an architect tells us that a building, any building, whether it's across the street or somewhere else in the borough, is adequate in size, we can work on the details of within the building at any one point, because I think at the end of the day, we're setting ourselves up for big problems in this building.
Well, I have no argument about that. I'm just saying from the standpoint of an ideal facility. And forget about where it's gonna be,
Yes.
over there, or over here, or wherever. It seems to me that having a law enforcement component to looking at what's out there that people have already done, you can't substitute his expertise from all the architects in the world. They can build you something great. Every officer has an office in this design he gave us. That's totally out of character.
I don't think you're wrong, Ron, but we're way
Yeah.
away from that. I think first we need
Well,
to
if you're
find
looking-
out,
And Lee did
but in
interview
terms of
John
final
on the
design,
job.
you're talking about the final design of where the walls are
That's
gonna
giving
go.
us the price.
We're talking,
Yes.
I think you're.
No,
I
the
think you're
number one
still-
goal of this, we have to remember, the goal of this study was to get the square footage.
Right.
It
So I
had
think
nothing to
that's where
do
you
with
have to
pricing.
start.
Anything Olson gave us on pricing is actually above the proposal that we requested from him. He gave us, it was, meet with John, meet with Michelle, analyze this building and what we need for the long term today and 10 years down the road, and come up with that square footage.
So I think our first
That's where
task-
we're at.
our
Getting the
first-
detailed floor plans
Right.
is 3 steps down the road.
Exactly. I think our first task is to decide, as a group, do we agree that we've got an issue, and how are we gonna solve that issue? And I think everyone's shaking their head, yes, we have an issue, we've got an ADA compliance issue, we have a space requirement issue. I think our next step, if we wanna take this logically, is what do we wanna do about that problem? And if we know how many square feet we need, do we look for another building? Do we look to fix this building? And I think, unfortunately, everything's pointing towards the fact that we either need to find another location, which either is building from scratch, or finding a building that's suitable. So let's start with the square footage.
Right.
And I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think before we do a final plan, John should go look at Harrisburg and whoever else, look at somebody else that's got 11,000 population. But I don't think we're there yet. I think first we need to say, do we know we want to do something?
All right, so my other question
So
is.
John said, you've already looked at this?
Well, I've looked at how Spring's set up, I've looked at Muhlenberg, they have a pretty new building within the last couple of years. You know, those would be the two
Those are more
local.
comparable than Harrisburg, I would say.
You know,
What's that?
That's probably a little more comparable than Harrisburg.
Well, it probably is, but it gives you some ability to think outside the box and not emulate something that's exactly what we have. But look at what somebody has that's state of the art that was built 15 years ago and see how they handled it. My other question is simply this. We have a lot of files everywhere, in barns, in basements, a lot of files. If we expect to keep those files around, we need to do something with them to get them out of the box in a barn.
We already started that.
We started that 3-year project.
They're scanning them.
It's in the budget, it's being scanned. We have a 3-year budget to get rid of all of that.
So they're gonna be done in 3 years?
Yeah, we started
We don't
last
have-
year.
Yeah, they're running a little behind because some of the stuff they took out of the basement was in poor condition.
Didn't we do a
They thought-
3-year program?
Yeah,
Yeah. So over a 3-year period, we're
We
scanning
got
it.
stuff out of the good
So
business.
it's all gonna be.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. We've been sitting here for a year, and this is the first time we knew we had a plan going on to put these.
It's in the budget.
Budget.
Well, that's all right.
It's been discussed.
There's a line item in the
We-
budget that
we-
says.
We've discussed.
we've discussed it too. I brought
All
up
right.
updates
Anyway.
about it.
We're good.
All right.
We're good?
Yep.
You're good?
You know, the other thing we were talking about, and Steve brought it up, about being landlocked, in which, yeah, we definitely are in Spurrow. And while we could go to some places that are empty retail right now, it really would not be prudent or responsible for us to pursue those because of just the astronomical cost. The other issue going along with that would be, you know, particularly with the police department, you want a place as close to being centrally located to your borough ends as possible. You know, and not just be like all the way in one corner of the hills and where you're furthest distance from Wellington Boulevard and going out Old Wyomissing Road. You know, if you can get someplace in the heart, quote, if you will, is a much more responsible and prudent position.
We talked about the bathrooms, the ADA compliance, you just walk out this door and out of this and go up the steps. If we happen to hire someone that has a handicap need, good luck, because we're gonna have to satisfy it, so.
Not even that,
No
I would say if
visitors.
Jim breaks his leg tomorrow and can't go upstairs, I have no office
Or
space.
hire-
We're all
hire
in down
those.
steps. We can go
I,
in
I,
down.
and I think knowing that this was coming about, Steve and I had some conversations and we looked around. There just isn't any piece of land that is around, that's in Wyomissing, that's accessible enough that is even a possibility. And secondly, I think if you can find a building that's got at least bricks and mortar up, has a good roof on it,
You can do
has,
whatever you want.
you know, I think your cost is gonna be a whole lot less than starting from scratch.
And the reality is, folks, we got one across the street. So we're gonna, I assume that, I don't know what this committee needs to do, if anything, is just, I think we just gotta keep moving forward and investigating what that would be, the different funding mechanisms that we're gonna potentially need to do so. Because I know we don't wanna spend all of it out of our reserves.
But that might not be the only option, so I think we should.
Yeah, I think we have to look at other options. Jim, the Landau buildings.
Yeah.
Like I said, I talked to Dave about it, and he's open for some
Yeah, because
discussion.
once I moved out, there's nobody in there but Dave.
So what size are they?
So the building, the 555 building that we're in, is 6,500 a floor, so it's 13 in that building, and it's 7,200 in the building that Runwell's in. That's a one-story building, it has its own parking lot on the corner.
Right.
And to be clear, you don't own any of those buildings.
I don't own anything there, I'm a tenant of that property of the
Make sure
Landau,
that's on the
the
record.
Landau Family Trust owns
I
that
mean,
property.
Dave said he was receptive to some discussion. I don't know, from a,
You know what we're talking
what, the kind of shape they're in, I mean,
Well, the floor we're on was completely renovated when we moved in, so that floor was good. Dave's has about 100 putting machines and 50 bottles of scotch.
Dave,
On his level.
he's got to move them to his pool house.
That decision's made.
Move it ready. I think the other side where the other building, which is mostly Runwell, and guys, Copenhagen has a small piece. Runwell actually was looking to move out, but they, when they bought the company, they signed some long-term lease, they didn't realize. So,
If we would pursue the building across the street, what would be our best bet in terms of trying to understand assuming, to Ron's point, assuming that the 2009 plans, which were actually done for that building, are still somewhat intact
Right.
and somewhat usable, just to give us an idea, what would you think would be the next step in terms of understanding the cost to renovate or fix or assess the mechanicals, assess?
Yeah, I think
the
you'd go
guts?
through, you'd assess, probably have, I don't know, if Craft would wanna be involved, maybe get Lee involved, but you'd want an architect to go involved, get involved and look at those systems, and you wanna look at the HVAC system, the electrical system, all that kind of stuff, the roof, you know. You
So
wanna,
it would be an architect.
an architect and an engineer, I mean, we,
My
like,
concern with Lee is that he's 2 months late on this project. That is unacceptable. His scope of work said he was gonna have the final plan January 15th.
No,
no, but we
Look at his
didn't,
proposal.
but we didn't award it to him at the start date
Yeah.
of his proposal.
I looked at that
It
on
was-
Friday.
It was 2 months.
He only got the green light to move forward January, like I got the big contract back January 4th,
Yeah,
so.
Well, I,
He was about a month late, I will give you that.
yeah, we took an extra month, I think, to get it executed, and he took an extra month to get it done, so they were a month late.
Well,
But,
okay,
yeah,
we
but,
need,
still late.
I think we need to be very clear that we need to start aggressively looking at other options. And by aggressively, I mean, let's not wait. If we have an opportunity, we gotta be able to jump on it. We gotta be able to find out if there's any funding available. We gotta be able to find out all that stuff quick.
So along those lines, do we wanna have an executive session at the end of this meeting to talk about potential sale and acquisition of property? Which is a allowable
We can-
topic for executive session.
Okay, we'll do that when we get there. Mikey, is there anything else? We'll do it.
No, I think-
Before I get the sandwich in my mouth.
I think if this committee agrees that we should, you know, I think maybe what the process would be is we talk to John Puccini and say, you know, here's what we think, you know, what else, I think we have to explore other options. So I think we go to John Puccini and say the committee looked at this and said, they recognize the fact that there's a necessity here. Ask him what else is out there. You know, I think we've already done some of that, but I think we have a responsibility to continue down the options path. I mean, we just throw some numbers out at Dave and see what Dave wants to do. You know, because I mean, those are still a centrally located, lot of parking spaces. You would have one building for the police and potentially one building for the police and one building for administration. So I mean, that would make some sense. But I think we have to look at other options. But I think that has to be the starting point. And then I think we should look at what steps do we need to take and how long will it take and how much will it cost to get an engineer and an architect to go through the building across the street, looking at the plans that were done in 2009, using them as a starting point, not a final, but a starting point, because, I mean, you looked at them, John, and they're similar to what you would want.
There's changes that I would.
Sure, but, I mean, in terms of the basic guts, they're acceptable.
Basic.
Okay. Well, then maybe before we would hire an engineer and architect, we would, you know, maybe you'd mark those plans up and say, I wanna change this, change that, change this, and same thing with you, Michelle, whatever you think from an administration standpoint, based on what Lee said, plus what you know, take those same plans and mark them up before we give them to an engineer.
So the plans that were done were just for the police department.
Yeah.
In
Oh,
2000
it wasn't
In
administrative.
2009, it was
Adams
not to
can stay
move
here.
both, it was just to move the police next door. And I think the idea was to take that and add that to the administration side.
And what was the 2009, how many square feet?
It's one floor, one of those floors.
One floor.
If you were able to do this without a realtor, you'd save a ton of money right there.
We're already, we're already.
He's a
They
broker.
would be
Yeah.
definitely up for that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we've already,
Yeah, it's
if
not
we-
listed to the realtor.
yeah, I think,
It's not listed, nothing's
Yeah,
listed.
right.
but the one across the street
It's not
now.
even for sale at this point.
Yeah, it's not for sale. The one across the street, though, I'm guessing is, John has some deal with the school. Or will be expecting to deal with the school, since he's facilitating the discussion. Don't know.
All right.
But those studies, the architects, they usually run $1 to $1.25 a square foot, so you're talking 25,000, that's a 20,000 square foot building.
Some
To
of,
get through and do that full report analysis.
John did mention, John Buccino, not John Phillips. When CCA bought that building, they had contractors go through and do full assessments of all of the MEPs, which is mechanical, electrical, plumbing. It sounds like CCA's MO is go in and gut regardless of the condition.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would also wanna ask the question, if we further discussions with CCA, are they willing to share those assessments, just so we can see, yeah, why not? Why reinvent that wheel?
Wait, are they open to selling? Full disclosure, I was on the board of CCA when they bought that building.
Yeah, I know, that they are open to selling, yes,
Really?
yes.
Okay.
Before we close that topic, I'd just like to advocate for the garage while we're talking here.
Yeah.
Because we suffer the same issues this is suffering. We have lack of locker room space, lack of bathrooms, lack of garage space for vehicles, so I'm just, and it's already,
That's already in my mind. That's been taught. We understand.
that's all I have.
You know, Jim, maybe what we need to do too, I think what happened is with the garage, I think the price just continued to escalate to the point where it got, we're not even close,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So maybe, from your standpoint, maybe you wanna go back, look at the original plans and see if there are some phases that we might wanna consider doing that will alleviate some of your other issues that may not be the $8 or $9 million project that they're talking about.
Well, I think we already did do, building the building, there was a brand new building, was phase one, and then reconditioning the old building.
So maybe we refocus that and solve some of your immediate issues and maybe rethink it in some way. I mean, if you would come back, I really think if you come back with $1 million to $3 million worth of renovations that need to be done to get more compliant and to alleviate some of your situations, I think the committee would probably have a much better appetite than for an $8 or $9 million project. Just a thought, I mean, and I hear you, and
Yeah. But when we were talking about, John, looking at police buildings and things, part of our process 2 or 3 years ago, same thing, Muhlenberg has a new building, Shillington has a very relatively new building, and Coomer. And we've looked at all those. For this, our manpower compared to some of those, and the space we have, it's night and day.
so maybe you break it down into 3 phases or 4 phases and get some of your priorities done and take it one step at a time, but maybe we can afford to do something like that.
So along those lines, there were 2 additional grant applications submitted last Friday for community project funding, which is discretionary funding, through the federal government. They were both for the Public Works Garage project. Each ask is for $2 million. So we could use, perfect world, we get $4 million total between the 2 apps, but whether we get 2 or 1 or whatever, we can use that funding as the required 50% match towards the state funding we already have to the tune of $3 million.
All the more reason, Jim, to try to break down into phases. In an ideal world, yeah, absolutely, let's spend $8 or $9 million and do it right, but it's just not realistic.
Okay. I'll get that executive session in a minute. Any other discussion we want to have on this building? Any other questions on this building? Okay. Jen, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay. All right, then we'll move on to, is there any old business?
Oh, you missed trailblazing signage?
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed a lot. Trailblazing signage, sorry.
No update. I sent a bunch of emails to Tom last week saying we had a meeting today, please update us so we can get in.
And then Happy Hollow maintenance.
This is coming out of the last finance meeting when there was discussion about the softball infield. Pretty self-explanatory, just need to authorize the borough's grass cutting contractor to perform additional maintenance of that infield.
I'm gonna put my 2 cents in here. We're landlocked, say it again. We gotta take care of the stuff that we got. Do we have any idea how much Smitty's would charge us to cut that on top of it versus?
No,
I'd love to go back to the days you hire a couple high school kids and start cutting grass.
Now buy the equipment, but we could do that.
Oh, they tried to do that with the school district and they shoot them off because they didn't want them cutting the grass. They didn't want somebody else cutting.
Well, the high school did do the
yeah,
infield
the
this
high
week.
school, the high school
Very
infield
cursory.
rugby, the high
They
school.
did.
And
rugby-
they have to every spring because they have junior high softball.
And we do have a contract with a third party just to spray them when the dandelions come up on the malls. He's gonna do a one-time spray of weed killing fertilizer,
Just
and
answered my one question.
we'll take care of it.
Our problem in the past has been, they would send people that are organizing baseball a $2,000 bill to pay for.
Yeah, I get it.
All right, well,
I do, I understand. I mean, I've been there. Remember, I lived
I
that
know,
with
but
you.
that's the problem, right?
So, we don't have any idea what Smitty's, what it would
We
cost?
already, it's a trivial amount of money, and we will keep the weeds out of the infield.
And
What we're talking about is cutting the fields.
They already do cut it.
And they do cut the fields.
They
The
don't
infield,
treat them.
let that go, and it's all full of weeds, it just looks like.
Okay, so
We'll
we're
get
gonna
one
take,
weed-
the bottom line is we're gonna kill the weeds. If we need to throw grass seed down someday, we'll throw grass seed down and try to water it if we can.
And rake the infield.
The infields, we generally don't rake, we'll spray try to keep the weeds out of the infield mix. But if nobody's planning on it, we don't go through once a week and rake it around.
But they'll be playing with it now the next 3 months.
Yeah, and that'll be whatever baseball groups are playing on it, we'll maintain that, just like Berkshire Heights, the Y Missing Area Little League takes care of those infields.
Right, and I would expect that that would be the same.
Yeah, over here though, they don't have the ability to drag the field, so that's.
Yeah, although Berkshire Heights have a track.
No, Berkshire Heights, oh, definitely. We
Yeah.
bought tractors and all that stuff.
It's a rite of passage when you have a kid young enough to play at that field that you just grab a drag and you drag it by hand.
I did.
It's great.
I did it at the high school field for Legion games, so that can be done, I'm not that worried. I agree with you. But that, I mean, if we could find a space somewhere someday to put a tractor there, great. If not, so be it. But let's maintain it, let's put grass seed down. If we kill the weeds and there's nothing left, like the old football field back when John played, you know, we'll throw some grass seed down on it. So does anybody have a problem with that? Do we need a motion to do that? Because it's already part of the contract, right?
Well, we're changing the scope of the contract. This
Yeah.
is not, an area that is.
Currently spelled out.
Okay, so anybody want to make the recommendation? Okay, we have a motion to allow,
City or somebody.
yeah,
Green Giant is who I have. a
Green
contract.
Giant to spray the Happy Hollow baseball / softball field to kill the weeds, and then the borough will keep maintenance as needed. How's that sound?
I'll second.
A motion in the second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay.
Can we talk about the pavilion? Is work being done on cameras and lights up there?
The quote was approved, it's in the year's budget, the cameras were ordered, but before we put them up, we need Wi-Fi to be installed, so we're at Comcast.
So that's working.
Well, I mean,
Well,
Once we get the Wi-Fi.
yeah, Wi-Fi needs to
Okay,
go up and then the
Wi-Fi.
cameras need to get
Oh.
installed, which were
Awesome.
ordered and still haven't come in, so yes, at some point this year, they will go
And
up.
that includes the lights.
Can we just use your Wi-Fi?
No, we didn't order lights. Lights were not part of the budget discussion.
Wi-Fi?
Well, while we're talking about Happy Hollow, okay, I have something I was gonna bring up under the business. I was accosted by a resident, I guess accosted. I didn't really get a chance to talk too much. They did all the talking. 126 Reading Boulevard, which is across the street from the library, and I had no idea that was still Reading Boulevard, or at least it dawned on me. Said, his car's been broken into, there's kids that are cutting through his yard, going to Happy Hollow Playground. And part of the issue is that there's no lights back there.
In the pavilion.
Or behind the alley, apparently there's an alley behind 126 Reading Boulevard.
It's Flower Lane.
Flower Lane.
That's Flower Lane.
When that
I mean,
house- built, the borough made them bring the driveway off that alley for some reason.
Right, that's what he said.
Yeah.
But he said that there's no, because I think you probably sucked him on me.
I did.
That's what I think.
He said, who should he talk to? And I know
Yeah.
he knew you.
Yeah, thanks.
I told him you were Steve or
Yeah,
Fred.
well, you got to
Actually, I
meet
told him
before
one
you
of the
got to
four
speak.
of you, because I knew he knew all four of it.
So
So, sorry.
anyway, I don't know what the process is to look at something like, he said he's even willing to put a light up, but it's a pole and he doesn't think he's allowed to put a light, a
He
dusk to
can
dawn
call-
light on a pole.
We've been through this, one other time, I remember, if he calls PP&L and says, I'd like a street light on a pole, if there's a pole in his alley,
He-
they would
poles
attach
in-
it, and he would have to pay the bill. You know, he would have to pay the electric bill for it, but he can do that.
It's a service pole. It comes
Okay.
off the alley, goes to that pole and serves 126 and whatever the house next, the new house they built.
130.
132, 130,
Something
something.
like that, yeah.
No.
So, does he want light in the alley, or he wants light on the pavilion? Because
He
that
wants
could.
light behind in the,
Where his
in and
driveway
around the
meets the
alley
alley.
so that it's more visible in terms of the kids getting through there.
So, there was nothing put in the budget for lighting at Happy Hollow, that was never part of
No.
the discussion.
There's lit lights all along the promenade, it's pretty lit up pretty well.
That's pretty well lit.
Just
Not in the pavilion.
No, not the pavilion.
Well, they had lights up there.
Nothing was ever part of the budget discussion about
Well, I know
lights.
budget, but
Yeah,
there were
but
lights on
there
the
were-
service house, not at
there were
the
lights all
Try to
over
put
the
driveway,
pictures,
just
but-
once over the
But
garage,
they
wouldn't
weren't,
have been-
and I'll
Ten
tell you,
kids
there's
around their
stuff
car,
going
driving.
on, I mean, I
Yeah,
can
but
see them.
he's not worried about lighting.
Well, I mean, in
Alright,
terms
hold-
of the cameras.
hold-
I-
apart. Let's go group, regroup. We can look into the lighting of the pavilion, if you wish.
Well, there were lights there.
Just may need light bulbs.
No, there's
I
still
think
lights
there's still
there.
lights there, but they're not on a timer or anything, they're.
Well, no,
Probably in a
but the
switch
lights
in the
aren't even
basement.
working.
I think, that- I
Probably
don't know, I think they
Well, I
would
know,
work if we
I know.
turn them on.
Let's try it.
My guess is they're connected to a switch in the basement that's not on a timer, you have to
Right.
manually go in and flip the switch, which no one's there to do on a
So
daily
how about we
basis.
try to see if they work, if they do, see what it costs to
See
put a
what- see
timer
what
on
the-
it, and we'll
right.
go from there.
Jim, I'm putting that one
Because
to
we
you.
have
for-
lights
But that's
there.
not helping this guy's
No,
problem.
no, that's a
separate
separate issue, separate
So
issue.
you're saying that if he calls PP&L, they'll put a light up or he can put a light up?
They will, it sounds like. And he's paying
You
the
know any
electric bill.
problems back there? It's Grant Scott.
That's-
So they broke in his car?
Yeah, he
So,
said they broke
Why
into
did you
his
tell
cars.
him to call me?
When was that? I don't, I mean, we get those from time to time everywhere in the borough, but I mean, it's not like it's
Okay.
a regular basis.
Well, let's look into what his options are, whether it's PP&L, whatever.
Jim, can you reach back out to him and tell him that he's brought it up?
I will.
And that if he contacts PP&L, he thinks they can put a light up.
Okay, was that old business, was that new business?
That was under Happy I snuck it in under Happy Hollow Playground.
That's not a happy holiday.
Well, it was close to
Close.
That's where the kids
It's in the
are
borough.
going.
That's where the kids are walking.
That's where
through
the kids are
property,
going.
Where exactly are they walking on this property?
He
so
said
They come right through his front yard, go down his driveway and go out to Flower Alley and then down to the park. Or whatever it's called. What's it
Flower
called?
Lane.
Flower Lane.
You get to Wayne Avenue?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. I told him to put a fence up.
Should put-
And I told him to put a gate,
Put a note.
a mechanized gate on the end of his driveway. and
Put
light it up.
electric wire around the place, that would take care of it.
I don't think he wants to go to jail.
I got kicked out of my yard all the time. Well, not from the gators and way. All right, any old business? Any new business? Jim, you answered the one question I was gonna have. We do spray the malls, is it, it's gonna? we got-
Yeah, the malls, the playgrounds, pool, just once and done in spring when the dandelions are up, they'll spray it with fertilizer and then the infields.
I think at some point, somewhere down the road, we need to start thinking about throwing some grass seed down on some of those malls too.
The-
Look a little shoddy.
Greg and I were just looking at that, it's one of those things, it's like the golf course thing, the tree, grass conflict.
Not enough, too much shade.
Cause we've split seeded some of those malls, thinking as opposed to just broadcasting, a real cedar and didn't get much action.
Area. Listen to me, like I know what the hell I'm
And the
talking
soil quality probably,
Yeah.
the soil
Very
is bad,
end
the
of the
Well, I think at
shade.
some point, let's
Yeah.
face it, as much as we spend on that circle, Centennial Circle?
That's correct.
Okay. I do think we owe it to the borough to, if we're gonna get mud running off those things, let's
Right.
get some grass on it, something like that.
However, that's a poor circle.
Hmm?
That's a poor circle. I mean, it's not very decorative. It's kind of like, well,
Okay. Blah.
Can I make a comment about the malls, about the strips?
Sure.
Can we consider putting some sort of ground cover there that's gonna grow well, under the trees, on the mall, it doesn't need to be mowed, it looks good. You know, my front yard's full of liriope, which is just a low grass, it gets a purple flower, you know, once a year in the spring, and fresh stuff comes up, it looks great. Rather than having to mow lawns all the time. Just a thought. I mean, yeah, there's gonna be a big upfront cost, but then there's no mowing. I mean, it's just, it's there, it grows.
Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 bad areas on the malls that are muddy and dirty because they never get any sunlight.
Right, so we know we need to look to see if we can find something to make the malls look a little prettier.
Should we add that as an agenda discussion topic for next month?
No, add it for like in November when we start, or September when we start talking about the budget.
Okay.
Okay, any other new business? All right, hearing none, we're gonna go to an executive session. Is it an executive session of this committee or an executive session of council?
This committee.
Jen, you good to stay?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go to an executive committee meeting of the infrastructure committee. Go to,